I'm sure you remember it. Every time a big movie dropped, whether it was an action or an animation or fantasy or whatever, alongside it would drop games for every platform these companies could get their hands on. Movies such as Harry Potter, which has games spanning from the early animated PS2 games to the later trying to be more realistic PS3 game, and even The Order of the Phoenix, which was very similar on both PS2 and PSP, still were entirely different games. And I know this because I owned and played both of them. Yes, much like many others, my childhood featured a lot of those licensed games, and I now look back at both as fond memories and with contempt. I appreciate that I played a lot of those games and I got to experience them at the time they released. It also gave me a comparison, for example, for games like Hogwarts Legacy or even the new Spider-Man, because the comparison was to the old licensed games that were based off the movies. And my contempt is at the fact I could have been spending my time playing literally any other game that was probably both a million times better and more complex and now considered classics. But what are you gonna do? Tell a kid he shouldn't play Avatar Into the Inferno and should instead play Final Fantasy X?
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
As much as I do have some good memories with older classics and maybe a few good games in the PS2, majority of the time I chose to buy and play licensed games, because back then I would choose what I'm familiar with, and what I was familiar with were the games that were based on shows that I've watched and enjoyed. From Pirates of the Caribbean to Lord of the Rings, these were things I know, so of course the games piqued my interest. Now that's not to say I tried nothing new once in a while. I did play some PS classics like Jak 2, Crash Bandicoot, Need for Speed Underground 2, Hitman and God of War, amongst other things in my PS2 days. But this was mostly due to the influence of my uncles more so than my own choices. Honestly, if it was just me, I think I'd own more SpongeBob games as a child. I owned 3, now I own 5. It's also easy to forget, but some of these licensed games I do consider classics, such as the Spider-Man movie games. I owned 2 and 3, but not the first one. Without those games, Insomniac Spider-Man wouldn't be what it is today, which that I say in my own opinion, but I think there is some truth to it. I always think about it from time to time, how insanely prevalent licensed games were back then. They do still exist today, but they usually aren't considered fun as they once were. Back then, as much as they were cash grabs, there was at least still an effort put behind those games that made them fun. Unlike the licensed games of today, where 2003 had Return of the King, 2023 had this. Yeah, it's one of those things that make me feel older than I am today. It's also kind of reversed today. Back then, every time a new movie or show released and it was popular, game companies would be like, hey, let's make a game for that on every platform. Whereas nowadays, whenever there's a game that comes out or that has been out that's very popular, studios want to adapt it into a movie or a show. It's almost poetic in a way. To think gaming has come so far and become so popular and acknowledged as the art it is, that studios want to adapt the stories they tell. I don't hate that it's reversed. Maybe I think it's fine for each to have its own area though. Not every game needs to be a show or movie, and not every show or movie needs a game, that sort of thing. Well, anyway, if you made it to the end of this video, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Let me know in the comments down below if you had a childhood filled with licensed games, or if you tried hard to avoid those games as a child. That's it. Thanks for watching if you made it to the end again, and have a good one. Bye!